Today on the show, why I think Audric Estime is going to be the team's most valuable player over Sam Hartman, and we're going to hand out a bunch of other preseason awards. That's coming up next.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Irish. It is Monday, August 21st, so happy game week to you, and thanks for getting your week started here by making this your first listen of the day. As always, you can watch a full episode on YouTube or listen wherever you get your podcasts. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions apply. My name is Tyler Wojciak, and I'm the host. I'm a Notre Dame alum and producer covering college football for Fox Sports. And guys, we made it. It's actually football season. The Irish kick off the 2023 season this Saturday against Navy, and we get to talk about real live football on the podcast. But as for today, I am so excited to bring you this episode because in just a moment, I'm going to be joined by my good friend, Luke Smith, to do our annual preseason award show. Luke and I used to do this segment before the start of every season on our old podcast called Sons of Saturday, and now we're bringing it to Locked On Irish. Basically, Luke and I come up with a list of awards, some of which are traditional and some of them are not as traditional. And then we preemptively hand them out to players and opponents who we think will earn them as the season goes on. Then once the season is over, we'll revisit this segment and see how right or wrong we were with our predictions. We always have a blast doing it, and I hope you guys enjoy it too. So let's get this thing rolling. All right, Luke Smith is here, and it is time for our preseason awards. So here's how this works. We'll take turns introducing each award and what it means, and then we'll get into our picks. We've got 9 total awards to hand out, and then Luke is going to share his official record prediction for the Irish this season at the end. But Luke, lead us off. What's our first award?
Our first award is the Club Fever Award, otherwise known as the Freshman of the Year. For those not familiar with Club Fever, or the former Club Fever, I should say, it was the greatest bar to ever reside in South Bend, probably, and it brought together the entire school of Notre Dame, but particularly the freshman class, and that is why this award is aptly named the Club Fever Award.
Do you have a first Fever memory?
Honestly, I don't recall too much of my freshman fall fever, but the first one I remember from second semester freshman year was going there on a Thursday night, and the entire basketball team was there. And then 2 days later, they put up 95 in Cameron and beat Duke. So I don't know. That's the one that always sticks out to me.
Yeah, so I guess you could say that Fever really brought out the best in the basketball team, but not always the best for some other athletic teams.
No.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Who are you giving out the award to?
I'm going with Jaden Greathouse here. I feel like more times than not in this fall camp, we've heard that he has been the best receiver at practice, or the guy that has stood out. And that's not just among the freshmen, that's among the entire core, which could be a problem. We'll get to that later. But they literally made his name a verb. I mean, we've heard the defensive backs and other players talk about getting Greathouse. I expect him to be the best freshman receiver Notre Dame has had in quite a while. If there's a spectrum, it's somewhere between TJ Jones and Michael Floyd.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I have the exact same pick. Really, Jaden Greathouse and Rico Flores Jr. picked up where they left off. They both had really good spring practices, and by all accounts, they've had really good fall camps so far. But it sounds like Jaden Greathouse is at another level right now compared to all the freshmen on the team. I think he's going to be one of the best receivers on the entire team by the second half of the year. It might take a little bit before he gets to that point, but the difference between him and Rico Flores is I expect Jaden Greathouse to be on the field from day one against Navy. I expect him to be out there a lot. I'm sure Rico Flores is going to rotate in, but Jaden Greathouse is going to have a chance here to really pile up some stats that, to your point, we haven't really seen a freshman wide receiver do in some time. It is going to be funny when he is performing well on Saturdays, and all those talking points about how Notre Dame doesn't play freshman wide receivers is probably going to go out the door pretty quickly.
Yeah, I wonder, especially with just kind of the influx of talent we've seen to have coming in next year's class for freshman receivers with Cam Williams and such, that narrative might truly go off the die forever. So we'll see. Fingers crossed.
All right, so that's it for our first award. Let's get to our next one. And this one is called the Jonas Gray Award, given out to a senior, has to be a senior, who has a breakthrough year. This could also have been the Javon McKinley Award, a senior who's been around, been with the team for a while, but has never really taken off and had that great year that we were all hoping for. So I'll lead us off with this one. I'm going to take defensive end Viper Jordan Botelho, and I'm going to be honest, I was a little reluctant to pick him at first, but I feel like I have to because he has the talent and he has the opportunity. Now it's just a matter of, is he going to seize it? Because Notre Dame absolutely needs him to break through the season. There's a lot of people who are expecting really big things from him, and I'm hopeful, but I look back to last year, he was 9th at the defensive line in snaps during the regular season with just 79. But then again, he comes into the Gator Bowl, plays 47 snaps, has 2 sacks, was a really impactful player in that game. But his season high in terms of snaps before that was 17 against Marshall. So it seems like a big jump going from barely playing to being, one of the biggest contributors on the team. But that is sort of the essence of this award.
It is, and it's interesting because I feel like he actually got more playing time the year before, even though he may have had that 4-game unspoken suspension, if I'm recalling correctly.
Yep.
But then he came back, and I felt like he got more tick. So very odd with what happened last year and how we couldn't get on the field more. But I agree. I think this is a good pick, and frankly, a pick that Notre Dame needs.
Yeah, and with Botelho too, he played a lot in that Wisconsin game when they went into that 4-4, and then he just really wasn't a factor the rest of the year.
Yeah, weird. On my end, well, I don't think my pick can be any worse than it was last year. I had Joe Wilkins last year, and he hit the portal and is now at Miami, Ohio. I think he quit after 4 games, so that's great. I'm taking Chris Tyree, and odd note here, they really don't have a lot of seniors on this roster. In fact, Tim O'Malley of Irish Illustrated pointed out that with Kevin Bauman out for the year, they have just 9 undergraduate seniors on the team, which is really weird. And it might sound kind of strange to say this, but I think it's Chris Tyree here who finally breaks through in his new role in the slot. He's played a lot, so you might not think of him as a breakthrough guy, and he's made plays, but I really think he finds his niche as a slot guy. We've all heard about him catching 18,000 balls this offseason. It's time for the 5-star recruit who chose Notre Dame over Alabama to finally play like that guy. Just get him the ball in space and let him go. Let's prove that that game against Oklahoma State in the Fiesta Bowl a couple years ago wasn't an aberration, and we can actually see him do that.
This is a good pick, and I was thinking about it too. It's kind of weird, though, because he had 100 carries last season, so he's been a factor on the team before. And there was a time last year where we were like, why isn't he getting more touches? And then by the end of the season, we're like, why is he getting any touches right now when Logan Diggs and Audric Estime are running the ball the way that they were? Now he's playing slot receiver. There's a lot of uncertainty at the wide receiver position, and he has a great opportunity to be like, I don't want to say his Sam Hartman's go-to target, but when shit hits the fan, it'd be pretty easy to just kind of dump it off to Chris Tyree and then allow him to make plays in space. So I like it. I like that pick there for the Jonas Gray Award.
Let's hope so. Next award here, the Kyron Williams / Joe Alt Award. That's the player who will have a breakout season. So this is not limited to the senior class. As for myself, I'm going with Xavier Watts here. I heard Mike Goolsby say the other day he expects this to be Xavier Watts' last year at Notre Dame with him heading the NFL after a breakout season, and I hope that's true. Let's face it, Notre Dame has some pretty quality pieces at safety, but they don't have a star right now, and I think a lot of people are counting on Xavier Watts to be that guy. You saw some flashes at the end of last season from him, and they're frankly in desperate need of that on a consistent basis from him this year. And this is really the first time he's had a full offseason of training at the safety position. I mean, even last year, because of depth, they're like, actually, we might move you back to wide receiver. And everything we've heard says he's really flashed, and he's been playing really physically. And I expect him to be able to make plays on the ball this year, too. So I'm going with Xavier Watts here.
I like your pick. I'm going to take your pick from last year, which is kind of cheating, but not really, because you picked Riley Mills, and even though he had a good year, he didn't really break out in the way that a lot of us had hoped. Well, I'm doubling down. I'm taking Riley Mills this season. He's played a lot in his career. He's never really been the guy, though, on the defensive line. That could all change this year. Now that he's playing his natural position inside, we've heard a lot of really good things about him coming out of fall camp. And if he's a beast on the interior, it would change really the entire potential of the defense in this season, because Notre Dame really needs one of the defensive linemen to step up and not just be like a good player, but just be a game wrecker, someone that the opposing offenses have to game plan around. So I'm really, really hopeful that he's actually able to live up to sort of his, I want to say pedigree, but just his reputation. I mean, he was in Bruce Feldman's freak list this week, so we know he's physically got all the attributes you want to be a stud defensive lineman, but now he has to actually put it together on the field.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we've been saying this for what 2, 3 years almost, and it's time it finally happens now. So it's kind of put up or shut up time there.
I want to ask you about Xavier Watts, though. There was a lot of hype around him in the spring. Do you think that's been tempered at all in the fall? Because I feel like we haven't heard as much, whereas it felt like in spring practice, everyone was like, oh, Xavier Watts going to be an unbelievable player this season. Now it's not like people are talking negatively. It's just I haven't heard his name come up as often.
Yeah, I think maybe that's a byproduct of just how much people are talking about the corners, that the safeties who back in the spring were actually viewed as a weakness, and that's still probably up for debate somewhat. You're not hearing that as much just because I feel like people are blown away by how good the corners are, and maybe now it looks like the safeties aren't a weakness, so they're just not talking about them. Period. I don't know.
So you think Xavier Watts will have a better season than, say, Houston Griffith?
I mean, if he doesn't, this
We're
would
going to
be
be in
maybe
a world.
this would be like the worst pick ever.
I don't know. Your Joe Wilkins pick for the Jonas Gray Award. Although I took, looking back at it now, I had Tobias Merriweather for my Freshman of the Year award, and he had one single catch.
Yeah, but it was a big one. He did lose to Stanford in that game, so there's that.
These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. I used LinkedIn Jobs a couple years ago, and they made it easy to contact the hiring manager, learn more about a role, and eventually, I got the job. LinkedIn also makes it incredibly easy to create a free job post on LinkedIn Jobs. All you have to do is add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. We all know hiring people can be time-consuming, but adding the right team member can be invaluable to your business, and LinkedIn Jobs makes it easier than ever. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post a job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, this next award is called the DCO Cafe Award. And if you're not familiar, DCO Cafe, how would you describe it, Luke? It's sort of like a hole in the wall in the Notre Dame campus.
Yeah, it's a cafe within an academic building that, at least when we were in school, I don't think as many people knew about it. Now it might be more popular, but it was really, in my opinion, and many people's opinions, the best lunch spot on campus. So hidden gems, a good way to put that.
Yeah, I think it was technically for faculty. I mean, it wasn't like they turned down students, but I think that the primary reason that was there was it was in a faculty building. But then once word got out and people started hearing about the spicy chicken wraps, the line got a little bit longer each week. So now the secret's out. We're not students anymore, so I don't care about that line. So this award goes out to a player who is not a starter week one, but will have a huge impact going along with the hidden gem theme. So who you got here?
This is a bit of a reach, but I have Boubacar Traore here, and I know he needs to add weight, and we've heard people say maybe he doesn't play this year. But I think that if Notre Dame is going to be a college football playoff team, they need a Benjamin Morrison level freshman year on the defensive line, and it could be Traore, it could be Brennan Vernon. From what we've heard about Traore in camp, despite what I mentioned about him needing to add weight, it sounds like he has some really, really special traits and just has a unique ability to get to the quarterback. And I think you're going to see him develop as the season goes on. Even if he plays and it's just the 4-game red shirt that Jalen Snead had, if one of those games, it's, the last 3 games of the regular season and then the bowl game or whatever it might be, if he's getting a fourth quarter sack at Cade Klubnik on the road in Death Valley in November, I mean, I'd be cool with that. Again, last year, my pick for this was Prince Kollie, which I would actually argue was not a horrible pick in the context of the season. I mean, everybody remembers the touchdown against Clemson, a couple other block punts. I guess I just have a knack for picking guys who end up transferring out of the program, but whatever.
Yeah, I think that's a good pick. And sort of the essence of this award is like week one, we weren't talking about Benjamin Morrison. Honestly, the Clemson game is the one where he broke out, but that game before that against Syracuse was his worst game of the season, and Syracuse was targeting him. They were going after him repeatedly, and I actually think he spoke about that recently on on the Notre Dame Insider site for Rivals, where he was like really down in the dumps after that game, had a conversation with Marcus Freeman, sort of boosted his spirits, and then he took off during the second half of the year. But it wasn't like Benjamin Morrison was some dominant freshman player throughout the season. He really turned on late. So if that does happen with Traore, that would be huge for the Notre Dame defense because, like you said, they really could use a player like that on the defensive line. So I'm going to take tight end Holden Stays. I think Mitchell Evans is going to be the day one starter at tight end, and he's going to see probably the bulk of the snaps, at least early on in the season, because he is such an effective blocker. He's shown that in recent years with Michael Mayer around. He was never really a threat in the passing game, though, up until the Gator Bowl. I think that job is going to be reserved for Holden Stays this season. I think Mitchell Evans will make some catches, but I think that Stays is more athletic and he's more dynamic, and I think he's just going to get more targets. Also with Eli Raridan still recovering from that second torn ACL injury, I know that Freeman said he's going to be ready to go by the Navy game. Maybe that's true. I think it's going to be a little bit more time before they actually get him out there and he's going full speed. So Notre Dame needs a receiving tight end target, and I think that's going to be Holden Stays. Jared Parker's the offensive coordinator. We know Notre Dame likes to go to their tight ends, and this just seems like a perfect fit where as the season goes on, I think by the second half of the year, we're talking about Holden Stays being one of the most valuable assets in the passing game.
I think that's a great pick, and I think he probably is the starter halfway through the year, as you kind of alluded to there. Everything we've heard about him in this fall camp has been really, really good, and it sounds like he really didn't start kicking on until the second half of spring either, so just to continue that upward trajectory, I think that'll continue into the season, and you're right, he's going to be a very valuable piece as the season progresses here.
Yeah, and if this ends up being Eli Raridan, I wouldn't hate that either. I'm just picking one, and I feel like Holden Stays is healthy, knock on wood, at the time of this recording, so I'm taking him. And someone's got to catch those passes at the tight end position. I just think it's going to be Holden Stays.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was saying. Like, some freshman on the defensive line has to step up. If it's Brennan Vernon, that's cool too, but I'm just picking Traore. I like it.
All right, what do we got next?
We have the Brothers Bar and Grill Award. The descriptor for this is the position group / player that might frustrate you at times, but will deliver when it counts. For context, Brothers Bar and Grill on Eddy Street in South Bend, Indiana. It has the potential to really be a tremendous time, cheap prices.
The cheapest prices, honestly.
Yeah, really cheap prices. They have a nice patio on the few days of the year that it's super nice. However, the service is, and I have nothing but respect for people like that work in restaurants, but it's the worst service imaginable. And sometimes you go in there on a Friday afternoon for the USC game and have 2 drinks, and they put 200 drinks for another Smith on your tab. So, it's that kind of place.
I was just going to ask you, do you have a worst Brothers experience? It sounds like you just named it.
Do you have one? Because I think that's mine.
Yeah, I do. I don't know if I want to go too into it.
Because it involves tears.
Yeah, there's been several. All right, I won't say that one, but I will bring up one. So Brothers has this deal. I assume they still have it. Wednesday was wing night, and they would start selling wings where you could get, what were they, like 50 cents a wing or something?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, with Brothers and their wings, they are the most hit or miss food item of all time. Sometimes they'd sell you these little bones with a nice little piece of chicken on it and call it a wing and be like, all right, yeah, that's $10. But on wing night, sometimes they're really good wings. Anyway, we go and we get there early. We get a booth and we're like, hey, once they start coming out, we all put in an order. And I'm starving. I haven't eaten. They probably start selling them at like 9 p.m. He's like, all right, got it. Wings come out for the table next to us. We're like, hey, update on the wings? Like, yeah, got him. 25 minutes goes by. Hey, still no wings, man. Any update? He's like, what? Did you guys order? And we're like, yeah, dude. Anyway, hour goes by. He's like, we ran out of wings on wing night. And it was like, we weren't even there that long. And then the good thing is that was the night that we realized, all right, we got to go somewhere else. As it turns out, Morris Inn has their own wing night. And their wings are like a million times better. So shout out to the Morris Inn. That's where we started going the rest of the year on wing night. But that is one of the many really poor experiences when they ran out of wings on wing night an hour into it.
Yeah, that's up there. Also up there with the time I saw a couple lacrosse dads get arrested and tased. But anyways, that's a story for another podcast. As for who I am awarding this award, I'm going with the wide receivers. I just don't think we've heard enough good things about that group in fall camp to give me enough confidence to not place them in this bucket. I think there was a bit of an assumption that this group would just automatically contribute day one this year, and I don't know that that's the case anymore. It could take some time, and that could definitely be really frustrating given who they have at quarterback and the other weapons on offense. But hopefully enough guys are able to step up like we believe Jaden Thomas has, and Flores and Greathouse are able to overcome that freshman wall, because I do think they have the ability to really come through, but there might be some moments of frustration here.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And as good as I expect the offensive line to be, as good as the running backs are, as good as the quarterback is, if the receivers aren't getting open, then we have a problem. Like Sam Hartman could do his best to get guys and make checks at the line of scrimmage based on whatever defense they're throwing at him. But if they can't make contested catches, especially going up against the good teams, then all of a sudden adding Sam Hartman isn't nearly as valuable because he just can't find guys to throw to. I don't think that's going to be the case. And I will say it's encouraging that they're going up against what we think are some of the best cornerbacks in the entire country every day in practice. But I don't think it's as simple as, oh, well, these receivers are going up against great corners. That's why you're not hearing great things. They're also getting beat by the backups, like Jaden Mickey and Christian Gray have had a lot of success going up against the starters. That's not to say that they haven't won some one-on-ones, but you would have hoped to hear more positive things about that group, especially with Hartman at quarterback. I think Jaden Thomas is going to be fine. This really comes down to Tobias Merriweather and Deion Colsey, two critical pieces to the puzzle who, frankly, have not really developed or taken that next step so far that a lot of us were hoping that they would take. And now maybe that could change, but I think that there's going to be some frustrating moments with this group, but hopefully in those big moments, they actually deliver, much like brothers can.
Yeah. I guess I must have a problem with receivers here because I took Lindsey in this thing last year, and I actually don't think he was the reason things were frustrating last year. He was open. The quarterbacks just stunk. So
yeah, I took the defensive backs last year, and I feel like that was pretty good.
That actually might be fair because they started with the safety blitz against Ohio State, and then by the end of the year, they were taking pick sixes to the house. So I don't hate that.
And then the USC game, I mean, poor Jaden Mickey was
half of them weren't out there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's not really their fault. But I think, looking back, that was a decent pick.
Mm-hmm.
All right, what do we have next here? Okay, this one is the 401k award. This is going to go to the player who probably won't have the biggest impact this season, but whose progress you're going to be watching closely because they have the potential to be great. So who are you taking here?
Taking Kenny Minchie here. And the reason is that Steve Angeli has seemingly taken a step forward, and it's a step forward that, truthfully, I'm not sure most of us would have thought was coming. I don't think much of the fan base was very high on him, and I would put myself in that camp too. But with CJ Carr coming in next year and the possibility that Notre Dame might bring in another transfer quarterback to bridge the gap, we could have a very crowded quarterback room next year, and who knows what sort of impact that might have on Minchie. For that reason, I'm just very intrigued to see how he progresses this year.
Yeah, it seemed like we were hearing really good things about him in the spring. Didn't have a great spring game. Then again, the conditions for him weren't ideal compared to the other quarterbacks. But I don't care who it is. As long as Notre Dame has a quality backup option this season, it sounds like it's going to be Steve Angeli. That's all I need, really. I don't need it to be Minchie. But it does sound like it's going to be Angeli, and I got to admit, that's pretty surprising to me.
Yeah, I definitely didn't see that one coming, but I'll take it. I think that Notre Dame's in a better position from a backup quarterback perspective than they were last year. That's for sure.
Yeah, and there were some people last year who, when Pine was really struggling, people were like, all right, it's peanut butter and jelly time. Let's bring him in. And the fact that he never was brought in kind of told me all I needed to know at the time. Like, all right, if he's not better than what we're seeing right now against like Stanford or mostly Cal was maybe the ugliest display of offense I think I've ever seen in my life. But when he was not coming in then, I was like, all right, then maybe this dude just doesn't have it because we are running out of options. But it sounds like he's taken a giant leap this year, or at least this fall, and Notre Dame is in a good position with their backup quarterback. So for me, I'm taking cornerback Christian Gray. Last year, I picked Benjamin Morrison, and he ended up not being a fit for this award because he was the best defensive back on the team by the end of the year. So this year, I'm picking another cornerback in Christian Gray because I don't expect him to play nearly as much as Benjamin Morrison did because Benjamin Morrison is still on the team. So right now, it seems like Christian Gray is like the fifth corner on the depth chart. But he's probably going to be involved in some special teams, so I don't think he's going to get redshirted this season. We're probably going to see him. We're just not going to see him a lot playing his natural position of cornerback. So it's going to be really interesting to see how he progresses this year, because I think you could make the case that he might have been a starter on some Notre Dame teams from the past decade, and not even just the horrible teams. Like, yeah, he could have started in 2016, but then again, like, we could have started on that team. I think he could have started on like that 2012 team for sure, considering they moved Kavari Russell over there and he started day one. So it shows you how far that cornerback room has come with Mike Mickens, where they get this stud freshman and he's not even going to crack the 2 deep at least week 1 because there's just so much depth in that room.
It's really impressive. And frankly, that room is built like a top tier SEC programs, like cornerback room is built. And we don't say that about the position, about skill positions very often.
We never have.
Ever.
We never have.
So I'll take it.
All right. What's next?
Okay. We got the MVP next. Who's going to be the most valuable player?
All right. So I think everyone is going to take Sam Hartman here. So I'm going to go a little bit against the grain. I'm going to take Wojciak Estime. I think the team is going to go through him because as important as the quarterback position is and is great. And as far as this, like Sam Hartman's, what he does this season is going to take the team. If they want to get to the college football playoff, it's probably going to hinge on him. But I think the game by game, when Notre Dame needs to just lean on their guy, I think it's going to be Wojciak Estime, because Freeman's an old school guy. He wants to be able to run the ball and stop the run. And I think this team is going to thrive when Estime is getting the ball, going up the middle, getting 5 yards to carry, running through the defense's throat, basically, and just wearing them down. I think that's sort of the attitude and the style of this team. We've heard a lot about how physical they are and how they just want to beat you up. And I think Estime is the perfect guy to sort of lean on that and embody this team's identity. So I'm going to take Wojciak Estime. I think he's going to put up a huge, huge numbers this season. And I am taking him as the MVP over Sam Hartman.
That's fair. I am going to take Sam Hartman. And the reason is because in order for Notre Dame to get where I think the fan base wants them to be this year, I think he has to be the MVP. He got brought in to elevate Notre Dame and to make them a playoff contender, and really not just a playoff contender, a team that can win a game in the playoff. You need a quarterback to do that. They've not had a quarterback of his caliber who has been on the roster when they've been in these games. And similarly, he came to Notre Dame to elevate his draft stock. He's 24 years old, a grown man playing against boys. I think that will show this year, and I think it has to show.
Yeah, I think one thing that kind of goes against my pick is that I think Wojciak Estime is going to share the rock a little bit more than we think. Hopefully Sam Hartman never comes off the field and he's just out there dicing up defenses year round, because he has the potential to have a truly special season at Notre Dame, given what he has around him, given the teams that Notre Dame is going to play. He's going to play on some absolutely massive stages this year, and the ceiling is so high for him and what this team can accomplish if he's playing as well as we think he can. So I think that's a good pick, and it's honestly just a bummer we only have him for 1 year.
It really is. It really is.
All right, this next one. I don't love this award, but we got to do it because we started it last year. It's called the Toledo Award, a.k.a. the What the Hell Was That Game. It could have been the Ball State Award, the Vanderbilt Award, the Louisville in 2020 Award. If you think that we're forgetting Marshall and Stanford, we're not. We're just never, ever going to speak of those games ever again. And that can't be an award, because Notre Dame's not losing to a team like that ever again. So who are you taking?
I actually am going with Louisville here. Notre Dame does have a rough start in that it plays 8 straight games without a bye. The 7th of this stretch is Louisville on the road at the locale, formerly known as Papa John's Stadium. Now, I don't plan on eating 40 pizzas in 30 days, nor do I believe there will be a day of reckoning coming for the Irish in Louisville, as Papa John himself once said in so many words. But this is a tough spot. Sandwiched between Duke and USC, there's a really good chance Louisville is 5-0 heading into this game. In fact, I think at worst case, they're probably 4-1 with a lost NC State. Notre Dame is the best team the Cardinals will play all year. And Jeff Brom has brought in a ton of talent. And if you just think about him at Purdue, kind of always good for one massive upset a year. Now, how do the Irish avoid that? Hopefully because they still have Jack Plummer's number. In fact, I felt much worse about this game until I remembered that he will be the quarterback, getting his 3rd shot at Notre Dame with a 3rd school. Regardless, I think this could be a funky game, especially who knows, that place could be jumping. And personally, this might just be a weird night for me, because looking way ahead, this game's going on. Cubs could be playing in game 1 of the NLDS. It could be a wacky night.
It could be, and that place will be rowdy, and I can assure you that Louisville fans already have that game circled on their calendars because they don't play Clemson this year. Their
They don't play
ACC
anybody.
schedule, their ACC schedule is super, super light, and then they have Kentucky at the end of the year. But this is the biggest game of the season for them. You brought up Jeff Brom's history. I think Urban Meyer still probably has nightmares about what Jeff Brom did to him when Urban was at Ohio State, and Rondale Moore at Purdue ran all over the Buckeyes, and they just spanked them. Like, it was one of the most shocking upsets I've ever seen because it wasn't even close at all throughout that game. So Jeff Brom certainly has that in him. I was thinking about taking this game too, but I feel like because it's going to be such a big game at Louisville, like it's almost certainly going to be at night, that it's going to be hard to overlook that one. Although then again, Notre Dame does play USC the following week. So from a scheduling standpoint, that game is just, it's in a really tough spot for Notre Dame. So I'm going to take a similar game. It's actually the week before against Duke, at Duke. I think Notre Dame is going to be coming off, not to step on another award here, I think they're going to be coming off their biggest home win of my entire life. Seriously, that game against Ohio State, I think Notre Dame wins that. So the vibes are going to be off the charts. The fan base might still be a little hungover by the time that this game rolls around, and that's why it scares me. I know a lot of people are bringing this up, like, is it a trap game if everyone is calling it a trap game? I don't know, but I do know that Duke has a really good quarterback in Riley Leonard. He's a future NFL draft pick. In 2022, he threw for just under 3,000 passing yards, and he also led the team in rushing with 699 yards and 13 touchdowns. I don't care who's around him. That's going to be a pain in the ass to deal with, and they do have a little bit better skill players this year than they did last year. So Notre Dame probably wins this game 9 times out of 10, but given the circumstances with the schedule and frankly, what we saw last year when Marcus Freeman had success, they didn't always follow that up with a great game. This one worries me a little.
Well, it's not like Notre Dame's ever lost to Duke before.
At home.
Yeah.
At home.
The good news is this stadium is up there with Northwestern for like the worst, most just vampire-ish stadium I've ever gone to. It's just dead. Like, even if Duke is good, I just don't see that place being that amped up. Duke is like all the gold seat Notre Dame alums on steroids. Like, that's their entire fan base. Oh, it's so pathetic, I think.
I mean, I guess it makes sense. They're probably a lot more concerned with basketball, but I didn't realize it was that bad. Were you okay? So bad. You were at the game in 2019.
Yeah, it was a blowout too. So, that helped.
All right. So those 2 games happening back to back is kind of part of the reason why they're so concerning for us. But now, what's the next award? This is a new award.
Yeah, it is, and I like it. It's the Am I in Utopia? No, this is South Bend Award, a.k.a. the biggest win of the year. I think you already alluded to this, and I think we might have the same pick here, but I'll let you go first.
Yeah, so I'm taking Ohio State. It's going to be the first home game I'm going to be able to attend in over 2 years. I'm already counting down the days. The atmosphere is going to be electric, and the stakes are going to be incredibly high. And look, Ohio State has had our number throughout our lifetimes. It sucks. It started in that Fiesta Bowl back in 2006. I cried after that game because my family, we were living in Cleveland at the time. We had this big watch party, probably 200 people were there, maybe 8, my family included in that number, were rooting for Notre Dame. And after they lost, I heard about it from everyone there, and I didn't handle it super well. I feel like now I've grown from that. I don't know if I'll cry after this one. Not ruling it out. No, I'm kidding. But they've had our number my whole life, and my cousin, who is a senior in high school, like, he can't even comprehend the fact that Notre Dame could beat Ohio State. And frankly, that infuriates me. So it's got to happen. I think Notre Dame is due. I think it's going to happen this year. Ohio State is a really tough schedule. All the focus in the fan base is on beating Michigan and winning the Big Ten. Well, I think they're forgetting about a little trip to South Bend in September, going up against a really good Irish team. I'm 100% certain Marcus Freeman is going to have the team ready to go for this one. And it's going to be a dogfight, but for whatever reason, and maybe I'll look back on this thinking I'm an idiot, I feel kind of confident, dare I say.
I agree. I feel pretty good about that too. And the reason is sometimes you just picture wins months in advance. You just see it happening. And this is one of those instances. I can say I did that with both of the Clemson wins in South Bend. That's how I feel. Despite the fact that it's the most talented roster Notre Dame will face this season, I kind of wonder if like the pressure gets to Ryan Day a little bit this year. Not only is it the Michigan thing, but they play Wisconsin too, and that means they're playing Notre Dame with Marcus Freeman and Wisconsin with Luke Fickell, two guys that Ohio State fans probably think that should be our coach or that could be our next coach. I don't know. I'm starting to think that there's a little bit of a mental block for Ryan Day, and this year could get off haywire for them a little bit, even though they are that talented.
Yeah, if you look at their roster top to bottom, Ohio State is a better team than Notre Dame. Some people might disagree with that, but I think it's true. But really, the difference here, and something that Notre Dame has not been able to win, is that the quarterback matchup actually, at least right now, favors Notre Dame. I think Kyle McCord is a good player. He's a big-time recruit, and Ohio State just pumps out great quarterbacks now in the Ryan Day era. But this is going to be his first big game. It's going to be in prime time. It's going to be on the road. Yes, he has two of the best receivers in the entire country to throw to, but Notre Dame has some dudes at corner who – I'm not saying they're going to win that matchup. They're certainly going to take some L's along the way. Those guys are just too good. They're going to get theirs. But I think Notre Dame has good enough corners to contain them and make life pretty damn difficult on Kyle McCord. So in that situation, I think Notre Dame has a chance. If C.J. Stroud was the quarterback on this team, it'd be a different story. But Ohio State's offensive line is a pretty public concern coming out of Columbus. They have to replace both their starting tackles and their center. They looked really bad in the spring practice. Maybe they've gotten that figured out a little bit since, but I still think those are the things you want for Notre Dame. Like, how can Notre Dame win this game? It's probably going to take some turnovers, pressuring McCord, forcing him into some mistakes, and I think that's a legitimate possibility in this game.
Definitely. I think Notre Dame gets it done, and the scene in South Bend afterwards will be something else.
I know. And then I think after that game, I'm going to have to go back to Chicago, so Utopia might be a little bit short-lived. But that is it for our preseason awards. Now, there's just one thing left to do, Luke, and that is for you to share your official, documented record prediction for the 2023 season.
I think Notre Dame goes 11-1 and makes the college football playoff.
What's the loss?
I do not think they win in Death Valley.
Okay. I thought you were going to bail out on that. All right, I'm glad. Yeah, that Death Valley game.
And here's the reason why. I think a lot of people just kind of think of Clemson as like they're dead now. That hire of Garrett Riley, I think, is going to change a lot of things for their offense. A lot. And, I mean, they just got absolutely embarrassed in South Bend last year. And that place is a really tough place to play. It has been for a decade plus. I'm sure by the time November comes around, I'll be saying otherwise. But that one just kind of scares me.
It scares me, too. What a huge game that could be, though. Imagine if Notre Dame's undefeated. I'll
be there, so that'll be fun. But yeah.
Well, you don't have necessarily the greatest track record going to Clemson.
Yeah, it's 0-1, so they need to even it up.
So you're 0-1 at Clemson. You stuck through that entire. Was it a hurricane, or that was the NC State game?
No. It was Hurricane Joaquin. Yeah, and yeah, correct.
Well, hopefully the weather's a little bit better than that. So, what makes you feel? What concerns you more about Clemson than USC?
Notre Dame has a better roster than USC. The only difference than USC is they just have the best quarterback in college football, which is obviously a massive problem. But I think Notre Dame's roster is way better than USC's.
Yeah, I think top to bottom, Notre Dame has the better roster. But I gotta make just the idea of Caleb Williams winning at Notre Dame Stadium makes me physically sick.
It can't happen.
It cannot happen.
It can't happen.
So that actually. You could make the case that is this Utopia or is it South Bend Award could have gone for that game because is there anything? Go ahead.
I don't know if that's Utopia. That's more like, oh, thank God. Like when Rudy's sitting on the bench outside the Holy Cross. Like, oh, thank God, I finally got into Notre Dame.
It's more of like a relief. You can't even enjoy it because you're just so concerned about what could have happened.
Yes, exactly.
All right, I think that's a good place to end it on. It's documented. Luke is taking the Irish to go 11-1 this season, and I think that's probably good enough to make the college football playoff, right?
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm hoping for. So, yeah.
All right. Thanks as always, man. I'll see you in Dublin.
All right.
All right, that's going to do it for me today. Thanks again for making this your first listen of the day. Remember to subscribe to the show on YouTube or wherever you're listening to the podcast and follow the show on social media. The Twitter account is @LockedOnIrish. Instagram is @LockedOnIrishPod. And my personal Twitter account is @TylerWojciak. I'll see you guys tomorrow.